Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gail Carson, your host for Women in Business, a show that celebrates women and their accomplishments as entrepreneurs or senior managers. As a woman business owner for over 5 decades, I take great pride in bringing these interviews to you. I'm also president of the SOB clubs, so if any of you are interested in going to one in your area, please contact me. Well, we have a wonderful guest for our show today, and she's a personal friend of mine. Her name is Sue Romanos. And Sue, along with her partners, has built CAREERXCHANGE into the 7th largest nationally certified woman-owned business in Florida. They provide talent acquisition and contingent workforce management solutions to over 500 companies. Sue herself is the recipient of more honors than you can imagine and was selected as one of the top 50 businesswomen in the state of Florida, was named Enterprising Woman of the Year and Businesswoman of the Year. Welcome, Sue, to the show.
Thank you, Gail, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm sure with that kind of resume, everybody is wondering how you began your entrepreneurial journey. They're always interested in seeing how people, start out and what gets them to where they are. So give us a little bit of your history.
Okay, well, I started out, I've had several careers like you. I started out in New York, which is my hometown, still consider my hometown, and I actually started on Wall Street when I first came out of school. I switched my career from Wall Street at the time, way back when, and decided that I wanted to go in the human resources area and went into work for a company like mine in New York City and helped the owner of that company grow to the largest independent company in New York doing what we were doing. We were doing primarily, what I was doing was permanent placement at the time, and I was placing people in jobs with my clients in New York City. I got a taste of what it's like to really run my own business, because if you're in this field, you do run your own business. You have your desk and you run your own show. And from that point, it sort of became obvious to me that I wanted to do this on my own. I wanted to have my own environment. I wanted to change things. I wanted to make a difference. And that's where it all began. So after that, I decided that I was going to look for a partner. And not being able to find the right partner in New York, I actually teamed up with somebody that I have known for many years, for over 40 years, who is my partner. And we decided to open in Florida, which was interesting.
Well, I'm sure that it was. That's quite a switch, though, from Wall Street to human resources. What made you make that kind of a jump?
At the time, it was sort of serendipitous because the market conditions were extremely poor at that point, and I was actually running a corporate finance department for a small regional firm, and there really were no deals coming out at that point. The market was so bad that no public offerings were coming out, and we were actually going into selling groups at the time, and there just wasn't anything really happening. So I talked to my boss and I told him, you're paying me a very nice salary at this point, but I'm not producing. And that's one thing that goes against my grain. So I told him that I was going to take a leave and, I would see how things improved if they did. And it just turned out that I, at that point, went into a different direction.
Wow. That's super because first of all, it shows integrity. It shows the fact that you're getting handsomely paid, but you didn't want to work where you weren't producing results. So that takes a lot of guts, But I'm sure going into business, even with a friend of yours and moving to Florida, there were obstacles that you faced. And everybody that I talk to that thinks about going into business, of course, brings up all the things that are in their way. So what obstacles did you face initially when you decided to go into business?
Well, it seems like my history actually is filled with obstacles because, as you said, going from Wall Street into an area that I knew really nothing about and starting fresh, that's exactly what happened to me when I came down to Florida, because I was very well known in New York. I had a very, very large book of business at that point, and when I moved to Florida, I really did not know anyone down here. My partner was in the business, and she had some contacts, but she was under a non-compete at the time. So we were starting fresh. I mean, fresh. We really just, and it was one of the most exciting times of my life, Gail. I have to tell you. I guess I'm just a born entrepreneur, because starting all over again really was fascinating to me, and in a brand new market. It was I was passionate about that at the time.
Wow. Well, that sounds great, because I know that. Of course, when I went into business, I was all enthusiastic. I was a kid. I was 21 years old, thinking I knew everything, of course, and was hit with a cease and desist order in my first 3 weeks of business, and I didn't even know what that was. So I can anticipate all of the things that you went through. So what kind of advice would you give to other women who are starting businesses?
Well, one of the things that I learned also when I was early in the business and facing obstacles was what I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. And when I went into the business, it was very clear to me that I really had to learn some of the things about finance and accounting that I wasn't aware of and didn't have to have in my previous employment. But what advice I would give to people is, in starting up a business, is one of the things that I think is critical is to really do your research. Know exactly what your market is, who your targets are, what you're trying to accomplish, what your financial backing is, what your budget is, and making sure that you have a written plan in place. I think that is absolutely critical. The other thing is that, as I mentioned to you, that I wanted to go into business with a partner. We were friends, and we were at risk because we were going into business together and had never worked together. So one of the things that we did was we sat down and we sort of drafted out a document that was sort of the divorce before the marriage. Since we had not worked together, we said, let's put all the what ifs down. What if this happened? What if that happened? And we put down all the circumstances that might happen that we could think of at the time, having gone into business together, to make sure that we would preserve our friendship. And I'm happy to report to you that my business partner actually just retired as of December 31st. We are buying her out. My other partner and I are buying her out, and we are still the best of friends.
Wow, that's an accomplishment in itself. And, you know, I have to say that I have not had good experiences with partners. Not that I've had that many, but any kind of joint venture I've done, or any kind of partnering I've done, has not really been great. But on the other hand, I'm laughing because you were talking about all these things you had to have. And you know something, Sue, I had none of those. I mean, I was 21 years old, almost fresh out of college, and I just didn't know. I had never done any bookkeeping. I had never done anything like that. At least you had some experience with that in your other profession. But I can tell you that to this day, I am not a great budgeter. In other words, when I look at a profit and loss sheet, I just go blank. But I know you put this much in and you take that much out, and what's left is profit. That I know. That much I know. So it's interesting because, you know, it's really almost like I kind of go by the cigar box of yesteryear where, you know, you put 10 cents in, you take 5 cents out, and you have 5 cents left over to operate with. Right. But I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons during your journey, but I wanted to ask you about the mentors and supporters you've got, because you and I belong to TCI, the Commonwealth Institute, which is really a mentoring organization for women and a place for executive women. And you serve on the board, and I serve as a facilitator. And I'm just wondering what kind of mentors and supporters you had who played a role in your life. Were they male? Were they female? Were they friends? Were they many people? Were they just a few? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I can tell you that one of the best supporters that I've ever had in my life, no matter what the situation is, and certainly in a business sense, is my husband. He's been extremely supportive, and he was actually the one that encouraged me to go into business with my my former business partner and friend, and to move to Florida. I mean, he was extremely supportive, despite the fact that when we were in New York, I was very reluctant, thinking about starting up fresh. But it worked out, and he's been extremely wonderful about everything. But
he also had to be a part of that move, so that kind of shook up his life as well.
Yes, it did. And we have very good friends who are very influential in getting him a position down here as well. So that worked out very well for us. But the other people in my life that have been mentors, I learned a great deal from the woman that I worked for in New York when I was in this business. She was an extraordinary businesswoman and teacher, and I learned this field in this industry from her, from the best. I feel that she was the best. I wasn't so happy with the way she was running the company, but I have to say that I really learned from her. And mentors can come in all forms and shapes. And I think that there are people that you run into at certain times in your life that are mentors, and not necessarily throughout a long period of time, but, when you need them. And I have found that if you reach out to people when you have a need, that most people, particularly men, are very, very supportive. And I think that most women are reluctant to ask. They're reluctant to ask for money. They're reluctant to ask for help. But I have never found really an issue with that, or that being an obstacle. If I need somebody to help me with something and I see that they have a particular skill or they have something that they can help me with, I usually will reach out to them, and it's been very effective. And of course, with an organization, I'm very active in a number of organizations that are very supportive, and I've had mentors in those organizations, number of industry organizations. I'm in another one now that I've been in since the early 2000s, which is people in my industry in the same business that I'm in, and it's a very small group of people that we get together once a year, and we even go into our financials, I mean down and dirty, every single thing, just to talk about, how we can help each other and what one person is doing that's working and one person that's not working. And TCI has been a tremendous organization, the Commonwealth Institute, which you mentioned earlier, which is a peer mentoring organization. I also belong to the Committee of 200, which is an international women's business organization, as well as the IWF, which is International Women's Forum. So I've been surrounded by an incredible group of women throughout my business career.
Well, it's gratifying to hear that, because for years you heard that women did not support other women. You heard that women preferred to work for a male boss than a woman, except not a woman boss. So it's nice to hear that. But you said something which is so true, and I want our listeners to really pay attention to it, and that is the fact that if a man needs help, a man goes out and finds it wherever he can. He goes out and finds it. And a woman is reluctant because she's afraid that it may make her look weak, or she doesn't know what she's doing. Whereas men say, I really don't care, because as long as I learn what I have to do and then I can do it, that's the important thing. So I think it's very interesting that you said that, because I think you hit upon something that's very near and dear to a lot of women's hearts. So, you talked about your husband. So is there such a thing as work and life balance? I mean, we read about it, we hear about it, people talk about it all the time. Some people say absolutely, some people say not at all, some people say, well, it depends. So where is your view on this?
It's a much discussed topic, obviously, and I've done a lot of programs about this myself. But I think that balance is really what you make it, and there are different times for different balance. At certain times, when we were growing the business, the business was everything. My business partner had a child at the time, an infant, and she really did not spend the amount of time that she would have liked to with her child at that point. But that was a decision that she made, because we went into business and we were growing an entrepreneurial enterprise. So we really needed to concentrate on what we were doing with the business. And there are other times where, family, well, as far as everything goes, family comes first with me. But I find that, there are times when I need to address a business issue and I'm at home. So I will work on that issue at home. And then there are times when something personal will take place and it has to be addressed during the day. So I will take that time and handle that personal issue during the day. So I don't know if there is balance. I really can't say. But the fact of the matter is, somehow or another, you just juggle everything and get it done. I think that's what we're all about. We just do it.
That's, it's funny that you say that because now that my husband is gone, there's a lot of